This is the Full Metal Jacket character analysis by David Parmer and Pranav Jairaj. This movie is primarily split into two parts, boot camp in Vietnam. This occurs in the late 1960s during the Vietnam War and around the time of the Tet Offensive. The main portion we will be dealing with is the boot camp portion. Boot camp was harsh on some of the recruits, but especially hard on Private Pyle, where he is driven to madness by his sergeant, Hartman, whom he eventually kills, and his fellow recruits, among whom are Joker and Cowboy. Private Pyle is most likely suffering from major depressive disorder. This means that Pyle exhibits a diminished interest in most activities, feelings of worthlessness or guilt, and possible suicide attempts. If Private Pyle were to have gone to a therapist, Pyle would be clearly diagnosed with a mild form of retardation. Through this retardation, Pyle would have received constant abuse throughout his life and would make depression an extremely likely outcome. This disorder seems to be diagnosed cross-culturally. Many people experience depression in many different ways, whether it be the loss of someone close, or the inability to cope, or even the loss of relationships or jobs. Many people in our culture do not understand that depression is a disorder and not something that can be easily overcome. Many will use the phrase, get over it, or be a man. This grossly oversimplifies a complicated mental problem suffered by many. Now for the evidence portion, Private Pyle exudes a depressive behavior after his comrades and friend, Joker, turn on him and physically assault him. There is an extreme lack of motivation during all drills performed that is highlighted by the focusing on Pyle's blank, lifeless stare. When Sergeant Hartman starts to talk about infamous shooting incidents, Pyle shows a sudden interest compared to his absent-mindedness in other drills. This assault occurs because of a decision made by Sergeant Pyle consistently messing up, especially when he snuck a jelly donut into the barracks, which is against protocol, and consequently Sergeant Hartman decides to punish the entire platoon instead of just Pyle. This led to Pyle feeling extremely guilty for his misconduct, but unable to change his actions because of his mental retardation and his fellow recruits feeling only animosity towards him. Private Pyle does not exhibit this symptom of fatigue or loss of energy. In fact, he seems to gain more energy because of a sinister goal he has planned. This goal is obviously to become a killer like the Marines wish for him to be, and to do this by murdering his sergeant and killing himself. Now for the treatment, the first order of business would be to remove Private Pyle from the Marine Corps or to send him to a specific specialist because of his psychotic tendencies and obviously for a retardation that somehow slipped by recruiters. Then a rigorous dosage of medication like SSRI would be implemented to attempt to lower the overall depressive mood. After this, a professional would continue to meet with Pyle for psychotherapy. This would allow for the medical professionals to keep tabs on Pyle's progress and to hopefully work out his extreme bullying dilemma. This would be very appropriate for this disorder because it approaches a problem from two different ways which have both shown to be effective in their own right. Through the continual application of these methods, the likelihood for Pyle to become a homicidal maniac would be greatly reduced. The effect of the medication would be an ethical barrier, but with the correct medical records and careful observation, the potential side effects can be minimized and the benefits maximized. There is a definite societal barrier to Pyle receiving such care because of the time period and lack of knowledge on the subject of major depressive disorder. Most would attribute his problems to that of his retardation and not to the absolutely visible side effects of his constant belittlement and bullying. Now, considering the broader perspectives, the depressive disorder displayed in the film is highlighted constantly throughout the camera work and acting. Full Metal Jacket is a very accurate portrayal of this disorder because of the symptoms displayed and the results of these symptoms. The constant psychological blows that Private Pyle receives makes him feel as if he is subhuman and feel like nothing but a burden to his comrades who hate him. After the subsequent beating of Pyle by his quote-unquote friends, there is a lack of life in Pyle's eyes. This leads him to a murderous and suicidal path, resulting in the deaths of the sergeant himself. Because of this hyper-accurate result of the trauma received, the film accurately portrays the extreme end of depression. The depression portrayed in Full Metal Jacket makes me far more sympathetic to those suffering from such a disorder and makes us wish to help them on a path to recovery. This recovery will not only benefit the lives of the patient, but could possibly save the lives of a murderous crime of an individual like Private Pyle.